Jesus Christ, this is going to be my longest ranking yet, and it's probably the one that's going to get the least views, because I haven't really established any Iron Man content pre-existing on this channel, but what better place to start than 25 of my favourite Iron Man armors in the MCU. Just 25. Not all, like, 100 of them, or whatever there was. It was 85. I should have known that. It was 85. So no, I'm not going to include War Machine armors, nor am I going to include every single Iron Legion member armor, although I will include a few of my favorites in there. And ultimately, this ranking really kind of depends on mood for me, I find. Sometimes I prefer other suits to others, and sometimes not so much. So this is kind of just my immediate thoughts right now. Anyway, without further ado, let's get stuck into this list. Soaring in at number 25 is the Iron Man Mark II armor from Iron Man 1. Now, the reason this is where it is because it's not the most notable Iron Man armor, however, it still holds enough of a historical place in continuity for me to include it on this list, but only just. Because ultimately, it is just Iron Man as we've always known him, but in silver, and ultimately, yes, it's a prototype. And that's what it looks like, but to be honest, it's okay. I think it's an okay suit design and everything, but it's not exactly my first choice for, say, which action figure of Iron Man would go on the shelf or anything like that. It had some really notable action sequences, though. This Iron Man armor is blessed with having the first actual flight sequence in the Iron Man history, as well as being the first Iron Man armor to fight against Iron Man himself, which is why it makes it on this list in the first place. In 24th place, and we are already scraping the bottom of the barrel a little bit, it is the Mark IX armor from Iron Man 3. The Mark IX made a very brief appearance in this film when it appeared when Tony had a little mental breakdown while at the bar, as well as a scene briefly at the very end of the film taking down Aldrich Killian. Ultimately, the Mark IX just isn't very noteworthy, simply because it is just a modded version of Iron Man's Mark VII armor as seen in Avengers 1. I noticed that the armor plating and everything seems to be made of a much thinner sort of material. It looks a little bit more janky than the Mark VII did, and as well as that, what's added onto it are really just adjustments to the arms and legs, and to be honest, I did prefer the way it looked in Avengers 1. By no means this is a bad look at all. In fact, I like the look of it better than some of the armors that are on this list, but it's just really not noteworthy at all when it is literally just a tiny bit of a modded Mark VII, and it's not even an improvement at that. In 23rd place, we have the Mark 35, aka the Red Snapper from Iron Man 3. The Red Snapper is a really cool looking armor. It's sort of got a bulkier look to it because it looks like it's designed for really heavy lifting and sort of rescue missions and everything. But it's just a really cool look. I like that it sort of takes on the old classic Iron Man color scheme, and I sort of thought that sort of the closest thing we had to Hulkbuster in Iron Man 3 was sort of a toss-up between Red Snapper and Igor. I think most people would vote for Igor, but this one has the classic color scheme. I think size-wise, though, it is just a slightly bulkier sort of take on a normal Iron Man, but I've also really loved how bulky the head looks. In 22nd place is the Mark 40, aka the Shotgun armor from Iron Man 3. The shotgun armor just looks tough. Something about it just really looked like it was made to be mean. I believe it was the last armor that Tony Stark wore in Iron Man 3. It's it's a bit like Mark II in that it's silver, but it's got more of an identity of its own, in terms of its very unique shape and sort of design and everything. It's certainly clear that Tony Stark was messing about with a more combatant type armor for Iron Man in this one, and it really does show in the design. In 21st place is the Mark 41, aka the Bones armor, also as seen in Iron Man 3. This suit is the one that looks like it was designed to stand outside of a fish restaurant in the seaside. And that's something I really like about it, is like if there were ever like a sea captain had an Iron Man suit, this would be it, and I believe it was sort of intended to be like an aqua suit, and it really looks that way in sort of that it's black with gold trim on it, and sort of has sort of a very old-fashioned sort of design almost. But as well as that, this thing can, you know, really come apart into lots of pieces and everything, and I just remember sort of Jarvis just ripping this suit apart and, you know, using it to fight everyone else and just really confuse them. It was a really cool sequence, and I really think the Bones armor earned my respect in that case. In 20th place is the Mark 42 from Iron Man 3. Now, when I first saw this as the main suit of the film and everything, I freaked out like everyone else did, I think. It was kind of a bit of a weird thing to see, like going from how these costumes had a very defined sort of color set of being red with a bit of sort of gold on the legs, arms, and head. It was kind of strange to see the armor take on a mostly gold appearance, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. At first, I hated it. When I saw it in the film, I definitely warmed up to the design, and I really like sort of enjoyed the usage of it being an Iron Man suit that's more portable, in that it comes in little pieces and stuff, and Tony Stark can just kind of summon it. I like that it was really obviously a very janky suit in the film. It was clearly not a finished build or anything, because it was probably one of the least stable Iron Man armors we've seen. Like Iron Man getting hit by a truck and his armor falling into pieces is something that you'd really consider unheard of, and it's quite clear that Iron Man's sort of job in this film was to sort of fight with what he had, and the Mark 42 was just kind of what he had at that time. By the time you reach the final battle and see it again, you really do kind of grow sort of accustomed to it. You really do start to like it. It's just that color scheme. It's like, ooh, someone prefers mustard to ketchup. In 19th place is the Mark 45 from the final battle of Avengers Age of Ultron. And the reason it's here is I do not know what this suit's purpose was in Age of Ultron. The only thing I can really think of is that it was the first suit to kind of have Friday installed on board as opposed to Jarvis. But that's really about it for this suit, to be honest. Like, we don't really see any of what makes it better than the Mark 43 or anything like that. It just kind of feels like it existed for the sake of tradition, in that Iron Man got a new suit for the final battle in previous films before it, so they needed to do it again here. In this case, I'm not fond of the design of this one. Like, I think it's okay, but I feel like from Iron Man 3 onwards, the suits started to get a little bit sci-fi looking. They started to lose that sort of practical edge to them. And I feel like this suit really suffered from that the most, because it really does look like a very video game-ish sort of looking costume. And it doesn't help that I think this was one of the Iron Man armors that was all CGI. I mean, not all of them are all CGI, much to my surprise. But this was a very CGI costume, and it really showed. As well as that, I know I complained that the Mark 42 didn't really have enough red on it, but there is such a thing as too much red, and I think that's what this one is a bit garish. In 18th place, we have the Mark 6 armor from Iron Man 2, and it also appeared a lot in Avengers 1. The Mark 6 armor is a great looking armor. It was the first time we'd seen an Iron Man suit take on the new triangular arc reactor shape, and it looked really slick, but personally, I just prefer the round ones in my opinion. But I thought the triangle one was okay. It was very big, very dynamic and everything, and I think it really sort of marked a change of the tides for Iron Man, and it definitely did for Tony Stark, because his sort of circle reactors were sort of causing him health complications in the film, and he does get another circle arc reactor later on, but he just has a triangle at the center of it, so I guess he kind of took that motif and ran with it, but I'm not really truly sure why this costume has a triangular arc reactor, but whatever, you know, like, it's a cool look, and yeah, it looked pretty striking amongst the other Iron Man armors. In 17th place, we have the Mark 16, the nightclub armor from Iron Man 3, and the reason this is here is it's just kind of a ridiculous looking armor. This is a very sort of Japanese anime-looking Iron Man, but I really love the little LEDs on it and the little fins that it's got on the shoulders, and I like the use of black. It's one of Iron Man's sillier-looking armors, but it's certainly one of the closer ones we had to a classic Iron Man in Iron Man 3, and I think I was just grateful to see Tony Stark suit up in a costume that wasn't entirely yellow for the entire film. But I enjoyed it, and its combat sequence with Aldrich Killian and everything, it was a really cool sequence, and it was a really cool suit. In 16th place, we have the Mark 39, the Star Boost armor from Iron Man 3. Jesus Christ, Iron Man 3 gave us the most armors of any Iron Man film, and we got a variety, and I can appreciate the sheer amount of variety that we got, and that really is on display with the Star Boost armor, as it's a very astronaut-looking Iron Man suit, in that it's very white and black and everything, and it's got this giant jetpack on the back, which looks really cool, and it's a real shame we didn't really get to see what it was capable of, nor did we really get a good look at it in Iron Man 3, but I just remember in the promo material and everything, I was like, yeah, that's a really cool suit. I really love the sort of cell patterns it's got on the chest and everything. I like the really small triangular arc reactor that's more of a blue color. It's just a really cool looking armor, and I really wish we could have seen it actually, you know, do something. It's one of those things where I think this might have worked quite well in Infinity War or something, but I think at the same time, people like me would probably whinge and moan, it's like, it's not classic Iron Man enough. But I think you get to a stage where you're like, okay, I'm ready to take on something different, and I feel like this armor would have been perfect for that. In 15th place, we have the Mark 17, the Heartbreaker armor from Iron Man 3. The Heartbreaker armor is one that I think everybody thought was going to be Tony's final suit for the film, and me included, and I thought it is a little bit of an upgrade from the Mark 42. It's something very different. It's a very different looking suit. It's got the gold chest and everything. It's got these massive clamps over a giant arc reactor, and it's got a very weirdly shaped head. I think we all assume, man, this suit is going to do some damage in this film, and then it just really didn't. But it doesn't change the fact that it's a really cool design, and it looks very heavy duty. It looks like a suit that's built for combat, but I don't really think any of the suits were really built for combat in Iron Man 3, as those things got shredded. In 14th place is Mark 38, the Igor armor from Iron Man 3, and I remember seeing this in the trailer for the first time, like, whoa, Hulkbuster's in the movie! Yep, I had the same reaction as everyone else had. And then the movie came out, and that was literally it. That was all we got. And it's a shame, really, how much they showed in the trailers and promo material for Iron Man 3, as they gave away a lot. Even though, like, the twist was in there and everything, we really didn't get to see as much of the Iron Legion as I would have liked to have seen. I would have really liked to have seen the suits all do individual things and whatever. And it looked like the Igor suit would pack a punch, but it didn't. It just lifted up a crate. But either way, it was a cool moment, and it was really exciting to see. Unexpectedly, he was in a silver and blue color scheme, as opposed to the classic sort of Hulkbuster color scheme, and allegedly he's not as big as he looks. He's more of a heavy lifting bot, but he's not a bigger boy, not like the Hulkbuster that we did get to see in Age of Ultron afterwards, which I really feel made up for this. But overall, I really did like the Igor armor from a design standpoint. Would have loved to have seen it in red and silver, or red and gold rather, but hey, it did its bit, it looked cool, that's all it needs to do, I guess. In 13th place is the Mark IV from Iron Man 2. This was an ever so slight stylistic tweak for the Mark III, more or less. In fact, when you actually look at it, it is a completely new armor, but like when I first saw it, I didn't really even realize that Tony had a new suit in this movie. And the thing with the Mark IV is we don't really get to see what it's truly capable of like we do other Iron Man armors. There's not anything that really makes it stand out, any function. As far as we know, it's just as powerful as the Mark III. I'm guessing it really only existed because the Mark III was so damaged at the end of Iron Man 1 that the Mark IV comes about, and naturally it's a bit more superhero-y looking and everything. But yeah, it's got a little bit of added glitz to it, which I really do appreciate. It's a really nice design. I just think the Mark III stole it for me because it looked a bit more realistic. In 12th place, we have the Mark 33, the Silver Centurion from Iron Man 3, and I'm quite a fan of the Silver Centurion armor in the comic books and everything. I've always thought Iron Man works really well with a little splash of silver on him, and this is no exception. It was a real treat to see the Silver Centurion in Iron Man 3. I feel like that final battle was just full of fan service when it came to the different suits that they showed, and I feel like this was the one that was for me in that final battle. So the Silver Centurion was easily my favorite suit in Iron Man 3, and it was kind of nice to see that be the suit that got, I think, the most substantial amount of screen time in Iron Man 3, aside from, of course, the Mark 42. It's brought to life really well, complete with the shoulder pads, so how can I possibly complain? In 11th place, we have the Mark 50 from Infinity War. The Mark 50 armor, on paper, looks really good. It is a really sleek and beautiful design. It's just that in the film, it just kind of ends up looking a bit like a bodysuit. I mean, it does the coolest stuff we've seen an Iron Man suit do. But it's just, it's kind of more, what's the word, anatomically sculpted than previous Iron Man armors, and I don't really like that quite so much. It looks almost kind of too flexible and rubbery, and I think the CGI that brought it to life is not the best they've done. I complained that the Mark 45 from Avengers Age of Ultron was a bit too sci-fi looking, but this just takes the cake. I just feel like they could have dialed it back on just how space-agey the suit looked, but it's still a good look and everything. As well as that, the suit up. I think one of my favorite things about Iron Man is always watching him suit up, so to see them ditch the whole mechanical stuff in favor of just little nanotech particles just covering his body, there's just less to talk about with a suit up like that. I much prefer the more mechanical suit ups. So yeah, the Mark 50 it's alright, but it's not my favorite. In 10th place, there is the Mark 43 from Avengers Age of Ultron. This is basically just everything I wanted the Mark 42 to be. See, the Mark 42 had a really nice sort of design to it, but I just didn't really like the paint job. I didn't really like the fact that it was mostly in gold this time, but I really liked the panel work all over it, and sort of the way the arc reactor was positioned and everything. And then Age of Ultron basically answered my prayers in that they took that armor and they gave it a proper paint job in the more iconic red predominantly, and then gold on sort of like the arms and legs and everything. And it certainly looked a lot better here, and it ended up being one of my favorite Iron Man looks. It's certainly one of the better ones anyway. As far as things go, we don't really see it suit up much in this film, but you see sort of the halfway suit up and everything in the Captain America versus Iron Man fight near the end of the film, and it's really cool just to see how this suit sort of, it doesn't all come together in one piece and everything. And that's something I always really liked about the Mark 42. It's just now in the Mark 43, it's got the improvements I wanted it to have, basically. In ninth place is the Mark 46 from Civil War. This armor is very much the bleeding edge Iron Man armor in that it's got lots of little lights all around it and everything, but it doesn't really do anything that the bleeding edge did. And it was quite surprising that Iron Man got a brand new armor in this film, because I thought they were kind of going to stick with the one that they ended Age of Ultron with, but I'm kind of glad they didn't, because I think this is a much more balanced, much more convincing design. In fact, this was the first armor since, I think, Avengers 1 to have that departure from the sort of space-agey looks and everything. It sort of brought it back to the real world again with this look. And I really do appreciate that. It's a really great look, and I was thrilled to see a bleeding edge style armor on the big screen at last. I really love the more square-shaped arc reactor as well. It's just a really cool look, and I think this was kind of Iron Man's defining film look for Phase 3. In 8th place, though, we have the Mark 47, which is the Spider-Man Homecoming Iron Man armor, which is just a repaint of the Mark 46. The difference here is that it's got a splash of silver on most of the body parts, but it's still got red and gold on there for like the arms and the chest and the head and everything. I just really like the way the silver looks on this suit. It gives it more of a prototype sort of look, so I'm surprised that this didn't come before the Mark 46, but the Mark 47 is a really cool looking armor. It definitely pays homage to Ultimate Iron Man, in that, you know, he's got the silver body, but he's got the red and gold everywhere else and everything. It's a really, really cool look, and, like, we didn't really get to see much of what this suit was capable of, or what really distinguished it from other suits in terms of its capabilities and everything, but it just looks like a more heavy-duty of Iron Man that we kind of already know, and it was kind of a treat to get a new design in Spider-Man Homecoming. You know, they didn't really miss any opportunities to change up Iron Man's design, but I feel this one paid a really nice amount of homage, and it was suitable for a movie where Iron Man was not center stage. In 7th place, we have the Mark 44, the Hulkbuster from Age of Ultron, and yep, this, like a lot of things in Age of Ultron, answered my prayers from Iron Man 3, in that we got to see a proper Hulkbuster, but boy did I realize the difference between a Hulkbuster and Igor in this. The Hulkbuster absolutely dwarfs Igor in proportion and size and everything. It is huge, but the amount of gadgets this comes equipped with, and how it suits up and everything, it's just an awesome scene, and it's an awesome armor, and just what this thing is capable of in subduing the Hulk and seeing it win and everything. It was a dream come true. In 6th place, we have the Hulkbuster Mark II from Infinity War. Now, the Hulkbuster Mark II, I feel, is just a bit of an upgrade design-wise from the version in Age of Ultron. I just prefer the look of this one. It looks a little more techy, it's got a little more of its sort of mechanical parts exposed, which I really like about it, and it's more of a crimson red than the more orangey red that it was in Age of Ultron. I mean, maybe that was just the color grade. That film was very orange in parts, but in this case, I just prefer the way this one looks, and I thought it was used really well as, like, the Hulk's means of still saving the day and everything. I thought that was really awesome. In 5th place is the Mark I armor. Man, is it awesome to see sort of homemade cheapo builds of superhero costumes, and I think this was the most awesome prototype costume we've had for anything in the MCU, although I really do love Spidey's hoodie suit. The way that you sort of see foreshadowing of things to come, flamethrowers as opposed to repulsors, the first use of an arc reactor, and it's a very sort of a primitive build and everything. The way he flies for the very first time, it looks heavy, it looks clunky, but it looks like it means business, and it looks convincing and practical, which is everything the Mark I needed to be. In my opinion, the Mark I is awesome. In 4th place, we have the Mark III armor from Iron Man 1. The Mark III is the armor that brought Iron Man home. This was Iron Man's first iconic look in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the first iconic superhero costume of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It holds a place in history. And the thing that I really like about it is how it holds up as one of the more realistic looking Iron Man armors. It's a bit more simplistic in terms of its design, but it really does look actually convincing that this thing could actually kind of exist, unlike later versions. It looks like a practical suit. It doesn't look overly CGI, and that's what I really appreciate about this armor. As well as, of course, the sentimental value. I wish we could have seen Iron Man wear this one last time in the MCU, maybe in Phase 3 somewhere, but never mind, I mean, it did get blown up in Iron Man 3. Sad. In third place, we have the Mark 85 from Avengers Endgame. Like previous Iron Man armors on this list, this one was kind of an answer to a problem that I had with the armor that came before it, in that the Mark 85 is very, very similar to the Mark 50 from Infinity War. However, the Mark 85 brings back some of the more mechanical components to an Iron Man armor, which I really, really missed. It also eases up on the red. In fact, the Mark 85 is arguably the closest thing we have to a classic Iron Man armor, in that it really does commit to the gold on the arms and legs, and keeps the torso red and everything. And even down to the nanotech suit up, this one at least still looked mechanical when going on, unlike the Mark 50. Which I feel was kind of just a quality thing, maybe, I guess. Maybe they just kind of wanted to bring back some of the old appeal of Iron Man's sort of suit-up sequences, but it's certainly much more there in this than it was in the Mark 50 in Infinity War, and I'm extremely grateful for that. The Mark 85 was beautiful, and I love it 3000. In second place, we have the Mark 7, and who could resist the Mark 7? The Mark 7 kind of throws things back to the Mark 3 in terms of its appearance, in that it goes back to looking a bit less glitzy like the Mark 4, and a bit more realistic. But as well as that, the Mark 7 is also kind of bulky as well. You can really see the propulsion technology on it and the jetpack and everything. It made for a really awesome look. But I think my favorite thing about the Mark 7 is just that suit-up scene, in that it bursts out like a rocket and just attaches itself to Tony. It is a really awesome sequence, and I think this was the last truly amazing suit-up sequence for Iron Man in this series, because it was the last time these things really looked practical. But just, it comes out as a rocket. How awesome is that? As well as that, I did say I preferred the round arc reactors, and it was a nice departure from the Mark 6. As well as this is the armor Tony Stark wore in his first time standing side by side with the Avengers together in that New York battle. And that New York battle was freaking awesome. As well as that, we saw these little one-off powers that the Mark 6 had, but here we got to see it actually put to proper use with the Mark 7. It's an awesome armor, it's a historical armor, and it's one of Iron Man's best. And now, in first place, this is going to be a pretty unpopular opinion, but whatever. In my opinion, the best Iron Man armor is the Mark V briefcase armor from Iron Man 2. Oh my god, this armor is amazing! Okay, so it had probably the least screen time of, like, the main armors in the Iron Man series, and that's a shame. That's a real shame. I would have loved to have seen more of this. But, you know, the scene it had was a great scene and everything, even though it was very short-lived. And that's my main issue, is this armor was ridiculously short-lived, especially considering its presence in the promo material. But basically, this was Iron Man's first red and silver costume. It was more of a cherry red sort of a color, which I really loved about it. But I think my favorite thing about it was just that suit-up, in that it comes out of this briefcase, which looks really awesome, and you can see all the mechanical parts exposed on this armor because it's only meant for emergencies. The idea of Iron Man having an armor that was exclusively for emergencies, being this one, was an awesome idea, and I really loved that about this, was that his portable armor was a very stripped down version of the armor, which really made the stakes a lot higher and everything. But we didn't really get to see that in action, and that's the thing, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe throughout Phase 1 and 2 was so fast moving that we didn't really get to cling on to any of the potential that we had with this. But, oh well, at least we got to have it. But in terms of design and everything, this is the most fantastic looking Iron Man armor ever, in my opinion, and I freaking love it. Now, if there's any armors you wanted me to talk about that I missed out on this list, then please do tell me, and I might consider making a other top Iron Man armors ranked. Who knows? Maybe that could be a good idea for a video. It depends how much you guys like this one. I'm not going to worry about doing too much of this if it's not what you guys want to do. Just let me know. And what was your favorite Iron Man armor, or maybe least favorite one? Comment below and discuss. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want more like it, Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and check the description. There is links for the Patreon if you want to support the channel, and the Discord if you want to come chat with me. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and as always, have a great day.